Tomorrow, prison boot camp. For young inmates, changing their attitude is one way to get out. Watch Peter Jennings on ABC's World News Tonight tomorrow.
Joining us now live from Beijing, Zhong Xiaogong, an editorial writer for the English language China Daily, which is published in Beijing, and Wei Hua, who serves as anchorwoman for China Central Television's English language service. And joining us here in Washington, Winston Lord, who recently completed 3.5 years as U.S. Ambassador to Beijing under President Reagan. Ambassador Lord has served in a variety of posts at the State Department and the National Security Council during previous administrations. He also accompanied Henry Kissinger on his 1971 secret mission to China in advance of President Nixon's historic visit the following year. But we're not here to talk about history tonight. We're here to talk about what's happening at the moment. And Ms. Wei, I must ask you a rather personal question to begin with. Where did you find the personal courage to start speaking out and saying, as you did just today, we heard you only a moment ago, calling possibly for Deng Xiaoping to step down? That's an extraordinary thing for someone to say publicly.
Well, actually, Deng Xiaoping himself asked for retirement several years ago. But because he's the most experienced man in our country, so the leadership needs him. And well, you know, as a man as his age, he should retire, I think. You know, although we need some advice or some direction or suggestions from him.
But you understand. You understand what I'm saying in the context of what is happening right now, where there are more than 1 million people demonstrating in Tiananmen, to call for him to retire at this point is not quite the same thing as saying it a few years ago when he wanted to retire. Now you're suggesting he's the wrong man for the job.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm brave enough.
You're brave enough. But yeah. Why is everyone being so brave so suddenly? I pointed out, as you know, at the beginning of this broadcast that only 12 weeks ago, when the dissident astrophysicist, Mr. Fang, tried to attend the banquet to which he was invited by President Bush, he was denied access. It's incredible. How do you explain that everything has turned upside down in the last 3 months?
Okay, I am myself amazed by the speed of the movement, you know, the development. Well, I think I myself get encouragement from the people, from the ordinary people, you know, they're so brave, and now it's the people's movement. So we have the 1.1 billion people behind us. So, you know, people is the thing, is the owner, is the masters of the country. So we should speak for the people now.
Mr. Zhang, where do you think, Mr. Zhang, that the movement is going to lead? What specifically, one of the young people who was interviewed a few moments ago spoke about the ambiguity of some of these terms like freedom and democracy. What specifically are these young people after?
Well, I think the movement is leading to more relaxation of the control, and that could mean more freedom and more democracy. And if this country is to develop, is to make further progress along the direction it has started in the reform, then we have to do something to rectify all the errors made by the government delays to talk with the students in the past few weeks.
Ms. Wei, how does the confrontation end now? As James Walker suggested a few moments ago, apparently there is a remote camera truck on its way to the Great Hall of the People, which would indicate that there will be discussions on television between the student leaders and the leadership of the Chinese government. Give us a sense, interpret for us, analyze for us, what kind of an impact those pictures will have on the Chinese public at large.
Well, first of all, this is just a report. I heard this. I hope we're going to broadcast the whole dialogue, if the dialogue will take place live to the whole country. Just to tell people, you know, we don't have to hide anything. Now, people are moving to this Tiananmen Square, the center of the country, the center of the, you know, China. So we have to show people throughout the country what's going on, because this is center and everybody is looking at the situation and they're concerned. So as television, the only Central China Television, the national channel, we have to do this, I think. This is the right thing for us to do now at the moment.
Can you imagine what the impact must be in some of the outlying provinces where they have only begun to hear reports about this when they see those pictures?
Well, I think they welcome this. People welcome the live broadcast if we can do that.
Well, I understand that they'll welcome the live broadcast, but what do you think they'll think about what's happening to their country?
Well, we open and we now admit that we made a lot of mistakes, and now we face it. If we can do that, this is the precondition. That means that the government is changing.
We're going to take a break. I should point out, first of all, that we are going to lose our satellite to Beijing about 5 minutes before the end of this broadcast, so my apologies to Ambassador Lord, but I wanted to make sure that we can talk to our Chinese guests before we lose the satellite. We'll continue that discussion in just a moment. Standing by patiently here in Washington is Ambassador Winston Lord, who's just returned from the People's Republic of China after serving 3.5 years there as U.S. Ambassador. Can you believe what you're seeing?
It's astonishing. I knew there was considerable malaise in the society, but I never thought it would demonstrate itself as we've seen in these extraordinary images tonight.
Try to explain to an American audience which is not as familiar as you are with what's been happening over the last few years, what is so extraordinary?
First, the size of the protests, 1 million people, but more importantly, the composition. The fact that you have the Ted Koppels of China, if you will, we just talked to, speaking out. These are people that have been speaking the party line for many years. The fact that journalists writing for the People's Daily, the party organ, are speaking out. In addition to the workers, the old people, professors, think tank people, and it's spreading to other cities as well. It's in at least 20 other provinces by latest count. So it's the composition, the width of this, and the courage of what these people are saying and doing.
What specifically? I mean, when you talk about the courage of what they're saying, what they're doing quite clearly is courageous in that they're engaged in hunger strikes and confronting the establishment, but what is it about what they're saying that surprises you?
Well, first, the first ones that spoke out were, of course, risking their careers as a minimum, the students, if not being locked up. Now, we've made progress in China, and you don't have the kind of persecution that you had during the Cultural Revolution. So the chances are that would not have happened. But nevertheless, to risk your entire career is a serious gamble. So that's one example of what is happening. Other people's professions could be in trouble. These people are taking considerable chances. But now that it's so widespread and it's so clearly a popular movement, I don't think there's a chance for a crackdown. I think this is irreversible. I think the leaders are making clear they wish to be conciliatory and try to diffuse this crisis. So now there's safety in numbers.
Before we lose Mr. Zhang and Ms. Wei and lose our satellite to Beijing, I want to go back to Beijing. Ms. Wei, let me ask you, if you can explain to us, what about the demonstrations in other cities? What have you heard that is going on in some of the other cities? Nowhere is it matched in size, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard people in Shanghai, in Xi'an, in Changsha, which is in South China, and in Guangzhou and Shenzhen in the southern part. People all took to the streets to demonstrate, to support students in Beijing, to support people in Beijing, voice their opinions, to show their support, their sympathy.
Mr. Zhang, what can the government do, even if it holds these meetings now with the student leadership on television? What is it going to have to do in the next few weeks in order to get these folks to go home, to go back to their universities?
It has to pledge a whole series of political and economic reforms in order to get those people to go back and to get the country to go back to its normal life. Otherwise, this movement is not going to stop, and no one's going to stop it. And the government has to show clearly to the masses that it has abandoned forever the old Stalinist class. Whenever there's any kind of discontent, the government has to be clear and to show to the people that they are clear that the problems in this country has to be solved, by seeking compromises. And that is modern politics.
Ms. Wei, let me ask you about something that Ambassador Lord said a moment ago, and I hope you were not offended by it, but I think it's true that until a few weeks ago, people in your position were, in effect, spouting the party line. You wrote, you reported what you were told to report. Can you remember at which particular point you and your colleagues said, that's enough, now we're going to be journalists?
Well, actually, we've been discussing this for several years, and we've been trying to do real journalism. But because we were told and we're supposed to help the government to keep the stability in the country, so we were only allowed to report good things or some minor mistakes, not too sensitive or too sensitive to the any reports that can cause some troubles or violence in the country. But we have to tell people the truth. So, well, I think starting from the May 4th, that day, we sent a crew, the English service at CCTV, we sent a crew out to get, the shots from the demonstration, from the masses in the Tiananmen Square, and we used it. We used it. We said, this is the thing that happening here. We have to tell people the truth. So we used that, and nobody give us troubles. And now, so, these days we're getting much better and better. Even the Chinese broadcast at our television do everything that, happening, just like what you people did.
Well, it's refreshing to hear you. I was afraid that your picture might disappear any second, not because of anything nasty that was going to happen, but as I've been saying all along, we lost the satellite just now. And if you can still hear me in Beijing, Mr. Zhang, Ms. Wei, I want to thank you both very, very much. It was good of you to join us. We'll be back with Winston Lord in just a moment. The Gorbachev summit and the fact that the Chinese and the Soviets, who have been really at loggerheads for many years now, have repaired the damage and seem to be back on the path to normal relations again. Should we be pleased or nervous about that?
I think we can be more pleased than nervous. We have nothing to be concerned about. Our relations with both China and the Soviet Union stand on their own, irregardless of any relationships with Moscow. Furthermore, there's limits on how far China and Russia can get together, both geopolitical. These two empires near each other with this disputed border and animosity in recent past, and geopolitical rivalry. And economically, China and the Soviet Union have much more to gain from the West, including ourselves, than they do from each other. So I think we can be relaxed about it, and in fact, it may help to solve some regional conflicts like Cambodia. It's already helped on Afghanistan. It might help on the Korean Peninsula.
All right. Ambassador Lord, I thank you very much for joining us. It was good of you to be with us. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
This has been ABC News Nightline. If you wish a printed transcript of this or any Nightline broadcast, please send $3 to Nightline Transcripts, 267 Broadway, New York, New York, 10007.